October 10th. I'm Amy Corr. I'm here with Kevin Van Eck, and we are excited to bring another great topic to you this morning. We know we are on the business planning focus as we are in October right now. So make sure that you've got a warm cup of coffee because we've got a great topic where we're talking about your operations. So grab your coffee and let's get into it.
That's right, operations time. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Amy. Let's talk about operations. We are going to talk through really two focuses, however you correctly say it, foci. We're going to talk about two things. We're really going to break everything down a little bit further, but overarchingly, we're going to talk about what you're implementing and then also what you're removing or modifying or taking out when it comes to operations and what you're doing in your business. And we're going to talk through five, when we say break it down a little bit further, we're going to go into five specific buckets that we're going to talk about. And Amy's going to take it away with the first one.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so 5 areas for you. And this is such a perfect time to be focusing on taking a look at your business right now and what, should I be changing and enhancing as we move into 2024. So the first bucket that we've got is business development. And when I say that, what I really want you to be thinking about is more about how am I building my pipeline right now. Look, we all had this amazing luxury of 2020, 2021, even the first half of 22, where business was really moving and probably kind of coming at us so fast, we were just trying to respond. Then last year, middle of the year, I think we all saw that pivot that we're still working through right now, where the market dynamics have changed that momentum. And now more than ever as agents, we have to get back to how am I filling my pipeline? How am I getting clients that I can be placing into homes and getting them ready to sell? So I want you to think about this. What am I doing right now? Like, what is my process for prospecting? Again, I know it's that word that a lot of times we cringe at, but it's a reality in our business because we can be great at everything else, but if we don't have a client that wants to transact with us, then we're kind of stuck in the mud. So I want you to be thinking about what does my outreach and my prospecting look like right now? And then what I really want you to do is take a look at what do I need to remove that isn't working and what do I need to add? And then for some of us out there, we might be doing lead generation through like Zillow leads or some other third party that is sending leads to you. I want you to take a look at that and say, what is the return right now? Like, is it worth the money I'm spending? Like, is it really working? And for those of you that maybe have a team or a couple of people that you're working with, like, how as a group are you operating? Ultimately, you need to figure out, am I doing enough outreach right now where I'm getting the kind of, momentum back into my business so that I have a solid pipeline? And if there is stuff that isn't working, get rid of it now and start coming up with a plan of maybe some of the prospecting activities you're going to have to do in 2024 to make it more impactful.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the second bucket then, which is marketing. So with marketing, look, with what you were discussing, the market has changed. The middle of last year, there was this pivot where things maybe got slower, inventory is still low, fewer transactions to be had. Many of us looked at what we were doing, and some of us removed some things from our marketing. So the big point here is when you look at what you're doing, and doing what Amy said with the first bucket, with this bucket, look at what's working, right? What are you doing? What did you do over the last year? What is working and what is not? But before you remove something, realize you have to replace it with something. You can't just take away all of your advertising, marketing, and exposure.
Right.
Your business will drop. If you pull back completely and pull back on things without replacing it with some other method of getting your name and your brand out there, you're going to feel it in your business. You're not going to, when the market turns again and starts the uptick, you're not going to participate in it unless you are creating exposure now. So take a look at what you're doing. And when we talk about replacing, if you are going to remove something and you replace it, and if it's because of financial reasons, because of your budget, that's a good question. Do you have a budget when it comes to marketing?
Yeah.
But when you look at your budget, if you are going to take out a line item, let's say direct mail every other week for the next year, if you take that out, you have to replace it with something else. There's nothing less expensive to replace it with than with your time. Because we've talked a lot about this, which is if you're going to remove some part of your exposure that you're creating, well, you got to get on the phone and dial because that's free.
Yep.
You then start texting. You start seeing people versus putting money into marketing. You have to replace it with something. So I think that's the big point here. And then the other one is if you do not have the time to do some of the marketing, whether it's social media, or let's talk about the experience, right? If you don't have the experience or the expertise to be able to do certain things, video, social media, are you going to hire or outsource it? Is it going to be part of your marketing plan moving forward? Is this something that you want to include in your operations? If so, then think about hiring or outsourcing it. Yep. Because if it's video and you've never done video, you know you're not comfortable on video, you're not going to do it.
Yep.
Right? So if you want to add something, consider, or you know you need to add something, consider that hiring somebody to do it or outsourcing it.
I love it. And now is such a good time to be going through sort of this audit.
Yes.
So I'm excited because I think it will allow you to feel so much more in control as you're moving into next year. Mm-hmm. So the third bucket that we talked about, an area of focus that we think is so important, is really related to your transactions. And I want to break it down quite simply. You know, for most of us, it's two buckets. It's sellers and buyers. And what I think you need to look at right now is what operations and processes do I have in place right now that work really well. For example, a seller or somebody makes contact with you. Do you know your 15-step process from start to finish to get them signed up for the listing? Then do you know what that next 15-step process is to get them to closing? The more organized you can be around how you operate with certain types of clients, it's really easy to put them in these buckets and then figure out what is my process around them. And you might realize, you know, this is a really impactful thing. Sometimes in those last couple of years when we've been moving so quickly, we started cutting corners. We started looking at, do I really need to, you know, take this step when I am communicating with sellers? Or, you know, for a lot of us, we've started this new opportunity for you in a listing to have a letter coming from your managing broker. That might be something that right now you don't have in your current process or operations when it comes to communicating with sellers. So it's a great time now to kind of do that audit. So what are you doing for sellers? Is it great? Where can it be improved? What do you need to remove and what do you need to add? Same scenario for buyers. And then for some of you who are out there and maybe work with investors, maybe take a look at what is my process for people who are looking to invest in real estate, or if I am working with a high group of, you know, renters, again, what is my process? So it's taking the time to look at my client base, you know, where do I specialize, and then what does my process look like to make it an amazing experience for each of them.
Yeah, and to go into the next bucket, the fourth bucket is along the same lines, it's client care. It's so looking at, you know, you were talking about breaking it down into different groups of clients. We'll break this down into the different parts of the transaction. Right. So pre-transaction, during the transaction, and post-transaction. And so when you talk about what that experience or that client care is like, what process do you have that you go through when you take in a client, and then what do you do to make them feel great? What is their experience feel like? Who's reaching out to them? How often are you reaching out to them? Same thing during the transaction. So when you have a transaction, whether it's a buyer or a seller, how are you staying in contact with them? What are you sending? These are all things you can now take an audit or inventory of and then add or remove. And look, in reality, you may not have a process for these things. So you may be doing more adding than removing because you may not have a process. Here's your opportunity to build that out. And don't get overly aggressive. When we talk about post-transaction, you can just put something into place. We've talked about the 8x8 system. We've talked about all these other ways to make it really simple, where with client care, your follow-up, the times you reach out, what you reach out with, what you send can be systematized, still authentic, but systematized so you don't need to rehash or reinvent the wheel every time you have a new client, every time you have a transaction, every time you close somebody. You're following this process. So now's the time to look at what you're actually doing, and if it's nothing, you're doing more adding than subtracting, but either way, you're gonna walk away with what you want to be doing.
Yeah, and it's so impactful because it's the part that makes them really feel valued, right? And again, it's starting easy, like their anniversary of when they purchased their house. Just make sure that that's part of your post-client care follow-up, right? Maybe after an inspection or after attorney review gets wrapped up, maybe you send a bouquet of flowers to say, we did it, we're locked in, we're getting to close. Whatever those things are, I just think those are separate than, you know, the piece I talked about before, which is, you know, the operations and the actual getting to business. This is much more of the caring and making them feel special piece. So I love that. So pre, during, and post the client transaction is really key.
Referrals. That's it. Bottom line, this is what keeps people, you can generate, we just had a conversation with an agent the other day where it was about how you can get referrals from the very first moment you're interacting with somebody. Right? But it's based on the experience you create. So that's where this client care piece comes in. If you create an experience that's different than anybody else, you're more likely to receive referrals because they have something to talk about.
Yeah, I love it. And so the last piece that we want you to focus on is the area of support. And this is you really taking a look at your business, whether you're a solo agent or you run a team or you are partnered with somebody. I want you to take a look at how are we operating right now? Can I continue to do this effectively by myself with the goal I'm setting out to accomplish in 2024? And if the answer is you're not sure, then now is the time to start again looking at your operations. And maybe it isn't jumping from, being me by myself to suddenly I've got, 3 staff members. It can just be, do I need a virtual assistant? Do I need a part-time virtual assistant? Should I be looking at, maybe hiring a part-time transaction coordinator? Or maybe it is that you're so busy with listings and that's your focus, but you are getting buyer referrals. Do I need to create a relationship where I can refer those buyers out to someone? So it's a matter of you looking at where am I today? Where are my goals for 2024 as it comes to, sales transactions and volume and what I'm doing? And can I do this by myself or do I need to start figuring out a support system for myself? Again, now is a great time to be able to do it because you're starting to think about, in reality, what does next year look like? So you've got to match that with what am I going to start implementing and putting into place right now so that I can meet those goals? Because oftentimes as agents, what we do is we get out there, we start doing great things, and then it's like we're midway through the year running around like a chicken with our head cut off because we didn't take the time to realize that we might actually get here. We might actually be this successful, and now I need help. So take the time now this fall and really start creating that roadmap for yourself, and don't be afraid of it. These are great things for you to be looking at, these 5 areas of focus. I guarantee if you take the time, you're going to come out with some really nice things that you can implement into your operations.
100%. Take it seriously. This is your career, right? You're here this isn't like a temp job for you more than likely. So
we hope not.
Take it seriously, right? Go through this process, analyze, treat it like a business because as Amy always says, you're your own CEO.
Yep.
You've got your own business. You run it like a business and it will be successful.
All right, we hope that you found this week of business planning, how to, in this area of focus, to be helpful. We hope you have a great Tuesday, and until we see you next time, just remember, you got this.